I estimated the size has to be of order Manhattan Island if the brightness stems from the reflection of the object. And turns out that there is a lower limit on its size, which is about 5 kilometers. And the mass is at least 30 billion tons, based on the fact that it maintains course so far, despite the fact that it's losing 150 kilograms per second. This is a big object. It's a million times more massive than the first interstellar object discovered 8 years ago. And the question is, why haven't we found millions of smaller objects before we find this giant one? And then on top of that, it looks as if it came along the plane of the planets around the sun. The chance of that happening at random is 1 in 500.
Avi Loeb reveals why Atlas 3I comet might be hostile alien. Object scientists are completely freaking out right now because something extraordinary is moving through our solar system that challenges every single assumption we thought we understood about how space objects behave. This mysterious interstellar visitor called 3I Atlas has captured the attention of astronomers worldwide, and one of Harvard's most respected astrophysicists is raising questions that sound like pure science fiction, but come backed by serious scientific credentials. Avi Loeb, the Frank B. Baird Jr. Professor of Science at Harvard University, has publicly suggested that this object might not be the innocent space rock that conventional scientists want us to believe it is. With its impossible trajectory, bizarre chemical composition, and behavior that defies 4 billion years of documented physics, 3I Atlas represents either the most unusual natural phenomenon ever discovered or something far more unsettling. The terrifying question that nobody wants to ask out loud is this: if an alien civilization sent this object on a precisely calculated path past Mars and Jupiter, what exactly are they looking for? And what happens when their reconnaissance mission is complete? When comets break every rule. Every single comet that humanity has ever observed follows predictable behavioral patterns that scientists can calculate months or even years in advance with remarkable accuracy. They heat up gradually as they approach the sun, develop beautiful tails that stream away from solar radiation, and their brightness changes follow smooth mathematical curves that any astronomy student can understand completely. Then 3I Atlas arrived in July 2025 and decided to completely rewrite the entire cosmic rulebook in ways that should be physically impossible. This thing started performing stunts that left professional astronomers with decades of experience staring at their multi-million-dollar equipment, wondering if their instruments had suddenly malfunctioned or if reality itself had decided to take a vacation. The brightness fluctuations became the first major red flag that something was seriously wrong with this supposedly natural space object. Normal comets brighten predictably as they get closer to the sun because increased solar radiation causes ice to vaporize and create those stunning tails we all recognize from photographs. The brightening happens gradually over extended periods, following nice smooth curves that match our understanding of thermodynamics and chemistry perfectly. 3I Atlas looked at those expectations and apparently decided they were merely suggestions rather than laws of nature. In late October 2025, as the object approached its closest point to the sun, it suddenly brightened by several magnitudes, far faster than any typical comet should according to established physics. The rate of change was so dramatic and unexpected that researchers immediately began questioning whether they were actually observing a comet at all or something operating according to completely different principles. What made this rapid brightening even more bizarre was that 3I Atlas simultaneously turned distinctly blue during this acceleration phase. For anyone who understands basic comet chemistry, this color shift represents a complete violation of how these objects normally behave in space environments. Avi Loeb himself noted that for a natural comet, this blue coloration is extraordinarily surprising and suggests the presence of unique materials or unknown processes that do not match anything in our comprehensive catalog of space phenomena. The object became bluer than the sun itself as it approached perihelion, creating a spectral signature that has never been documented in the entire history of astronomical observation. The impossible anti-tail that defies physics, perhaps the most absolutely mind-boggling feature that has scientists questioning their fundamental understanding of cosmic mechanics is 3I Atlas's completely impossible tail behavior. For literally thousands of years of human civilization observing the night sky, every single comet without exception has developed tails that point away from the sun because solar wind and radiation pressure naturally push all materials outward into space. This is not some obscure technical detail that only specialists with advanced degrees understand. It represents one of the most basic and fundamental principles governing how matter behaves when exposed to stellar radiation in the vacuum of space. I-Check Atlas looked at 4 billion years of established cosmic behavior and decided to do the exact opposite by creating what researchers are calling an anti-tail or sunward jet. During July and August 2025, observers documented a stream of material pointing directly toward the sun rather than away from it, seemingly violating basic physics in ways that should be completely impossible. This was not merely an optical illusion like the occasional perspective tricks that can make normal comet tails appear to point in unusual directions from certain viewing angles. Multiple independent observations from different locations confirmed that actual material was somehow flowing in the wrong direction against the overwhelming force of solar radiation pressure. Scientists desperately tried to explain this phenomenon using conventional physics by suggesting that unusual dust particle geometry might create strange light scattering effects. The problem is that even accounting for every possible natural explanation, the intensity and duration of this anti-tail behavior exceeds what any known process should be capable of producing. The anti-tail eventually switched back to a more conventional orientation as 3I Atlas got even closer to the sun, but this transition raised even more questions about what kind of mechanisms could produce such dramatic changes in material flow direction. Avi Loeb's 9 anomalies. When someone with Avi Loeb's credentials starts publicly questioning whether a space object might represent alien technology rather than natural phenomena, the entire scientific community pays attention whether they agree with his conclusions or not. Loeb has spent decades building an impressive reputation as a serious researcher who asks uncomfortable questions that most academics prefer to avoid in polite circles. His detailed analysis of 3I Atlas identifies 9 specific anomalies that he argues justify serious consideration of the possibility that this object might be artificial rather than natural. The first major anomaly involves the object's trajectory being aligned within just 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane where all the solar system's major planets orbit. Loeb calculates that the statistical probability of any random interstellar visitor naturally achieving this level of precision is approximately 0.2%, which is roughly equivalent to winning a particularly difficult cosmic lottery. Most objects approaching from interstellar space arrive at chaotic angles that reflect their random origins and the various gravitational influences they encountered during their long journeys through the void. The second anomaly builds on the first by noting that 3I Atlas's precisely timed arrival brings it past Mars, Venus, and Jupiter at distances that seem almost deliberately calculated for optimal observation. The object passed close enough to Mars in October 2025 that European Space Agency spacecraft orbiting the red planet were able to capture photographs of it. It is expected to come within just 33.3 million miles of Jupiter in March 2026, potentially allowing NASA's Juno spacecraft to intercept its path as well. Loeb describes this as remarkable fine-tuning of the object's path that seems far too convenient to be pure coincidence. The third anomaly is the anti-tail phenomenon already discussed, which Loeb emphasizes is not merely an optical illusion but represents actual material movement that defies conventional comet physics. The fourth involves the object's massive size compared to previous interstellar visitors. With a nucleus approximately 1 million times more massive than Oumuamua and 1,000 times heavier than 2I Borisov. This enormous scale raises questions about what natural processes could produce such a gigantic interstellar wanderer. The fifth anomaly centers on 3I Atlas's bizarre chemical composition consisting of approximately 87% carbon dioxide, 9% carbon monoxide, and only 4% water. This represents a complete inversion of typical comet chemistry, where water ice should dominate the composition. Finding something constructed almost entirely of carbon dioxide gas is equivalent to discovering an iceberg made of sand and metal instead of frozen water. The sixth anomaly involves the presence of nickel in the spectral analysis without corresponding iron deposits. In space environments, these two metals almost always occur together because they form under nearly identical conditions and possess remarkably similar chemical properties. Finding isolated nickel is extraordinarily unusual and suggests formation in an environment completely unlike anything that exists naturally in our cosmic neighborhood. The seventh, eighth, and ninth anomalies involve the object's timing, its apparent non-gravitational acceleration, and its unusual optical properties. Based on all these factors combined, Loeb has assigned 3I Atlas a score of 4 on his own ranking scale, where 0 represents a definitely natural interstellar object and 10 indicates clearly technological origins, the non-gravitational acceleration. Mystery, perhaps the most compelling evidence that 3I Atlas might be something more than a simple space rock, comes from observations of what appears to be non-gravitational acceleration. Normal comets can exhibit small accelerations caused by outgassing as solar heating vaporizes ice and creates jet-like thrusts. However, the acceleration patterns observed in 3I Atlas do not match the expected behavior of natural outgassing processes. Avi Loeb has gone on record, suggesting that this non-gravitational acceleration might be the technological signature of an internal engine driving the object through space. He wrote in his blog that alternatively, the non-gravitational acceleration might be the technological signature of an internal engine, raising the possibility that what we are observing is not geology, but propulsion technology. This hypothesis would explain why 3I Atlas can make precise course corrections and maintain its remarkably accurate trajectory through the solar system. The idea of an internal engine sounds like pure science fiction, but Loeb bases this suggestion on actual observational data rather than wild speculation. The object's behavior as it approached the sun showed acceleration patterns that are difficult to explain through conventional processes. Combined with the unusual blue coloration that emerged during this period, these observations create a picture of an object that might be actively controlling its own movement, rather than passively responding to gravitational and solar forces. The mothership hypothesis. Loeb's most controversial suggestion involves the possibility that 3I Atlas might be operating as some kind of technological mothership specifically designed to release smaller reconnaissance probes while passing through our solar system. According to this hypothesis, the sudden dramatic brightness increases documented during the object's approach could represent a sophisticated technological system, systematically breaking apart and deploying smaller reconnaissance craft toward Mars and other planets. The timing of these brightness bursts becomes particularly intriguing when considered through this lens. Rather than following the random patterns expected from natural chemical reactions occurring inside a typical comet nucleus, the brightness variations seem to occur with suspicious precision, especially as the object approaches planets of scientific interest. This apparent coordination feels far too deliberately orchestrated to represent mere natural coincidence. The spacecraft theory attempts to provide a comprehensive framework for explaining all the impossible behaviors that 3I Atlas has demonstrated since its discovery. The forward-pointing antitail could represent some form of advanced propulsion system, or perhaps a sophisticated communication device, transmitting signals back toward its point of origin. The completely bizarre chemical composition could indicate the use of artificial construction materials that do not exist anywhere in nature. The non-gravitational acceleration patterns could reflect active navigation adjustments being made by onboard control systems. The Mars connection October 2025 represented what might be one of the most important observational opportunities in the history of interstellar object research. On that date, 3I Atlas made its closest approach to Mars, providing the international scientific community with what could be their only realistic chance to capture high-resolution images of this enigmatic visitor. The European Space Agency's spacecraft orbiting Mars successfully photographed the object as it passed, marking the first time in human history that any confirmed interstellar visitor has been imaged from the perspective of another planet. The unique Martian viewpoint could potentially reveal crucial structural details and physical characteristics that remain impossible to detect from Earth's position. Multiple spacecraft positioned at different locations throughout the solar system contributed valuable data to this unprecedented international observation campaign. The timing of this observation opportunity was particularly critical because 3I Atlas will not remain accessible for detailed study much longer. As a genuine interstellar object, it is not gravitationally bound to our solar system and will eventually continue its journey into deep interstellar space, quite possibly never to return within any reasonable human time frame. What makes the Mars flyby even more suspicious is how precisely calculated the encounter distance appears to be. The object passed close enough to enable detailed scientific observations, yet maintained sufficient distance to avoid any possibility of collision. This highly selective approach to planetary flybys feels much more like intelligent mission planning than the chaotic gravitational interactions that typically govern natural space object behavior. Scientific controversy and pushback. It is important to acknowledge that Loeb's suggestions about 3I Atlas potentially being artificial technology have met with significant skepticism from many members of the scientific community. The wide consensus among mainstream astronomers is that we are looking at a comet largely made up of carbon dioxide ice that happens to exhibit some unusual, but ultimately natural properties. Critics point out that Loeb has previously made controversial claims about other interstellar objects, including Oumuamua, that have been widely rejected by other researchers. In 2023, Loeb claimed to have recovered spherules from the ocean floor that he suggested could be evidence of an alien starship, but subsequent analysis indicated he had likely mistaken a seismic signal from a truck for a meteor impact. These previous controversies have made some scientists hesitant to take his latest suggestions about 3I Atlas seriously, viewing them as part of a pattern of making sensational claims that grab headlines but lack sufficient supporting evidence. However, even Loeb himself admits that 3I Atlas is most likely a comet of natural origin. His argument is not that we should immediately conclude the object is artificial, but rather that the anomalies are significant enough that we must seriously investigate the possibility. As Loeb told Newsweek, the implication of alien technology would be huge, and therefore we must take it seriously. What happens next? As of early November 2025, 3I Atlas has made its closest approach to the Sun and is beginning to head back out toward interstellar space. The object's perihelion positioned it directly behind the Sun from Earth's perspective, making detailed observations during this critical phase extremely difficult. This timing has frustrated researchers who had hoped to capture comprehensive data about the object's behavior during its maximum exposure to solar energy. The coming months will be crucial for determining whether any of Loeb's more provocative suggestions have merit. High-resolution images from various space-based observatories are still being analyzed, and the planned Jupiter encounter in March 2026 could provide additional valuable data. NASA's Juno spacecraft may have opportunities to observe the object if it passes close enough to Jupiter. Regardless of whether 3I Atlas ultimately proves to be natural or artificial, this mysterious visitor has already accomplished something remarkable. It has forced scientists to confront the limitations of our current understanding and consider possibilities that previously seemed to belong exclusively to science fiction. Whether you believe Avi Loeb's suggestions or dismiss them as overly speculative, there is no denying that 3I Atlas represents one of the most unusual objects ever detected in our solar system. The question of whether we are alone in the universe has haunted humanity for generations. 3I Atlas may not provide a definitive answer to that question, but it reminds us that the cosmos still holds mysteries that challenge our assumptions and push the boundaries of scientific understanding. As this enigmatic visitor continues its journey back into the darkness between the stars, it leaves behind more questions than answers and a profound sense that perhaps we do not know as much about the universe as we thought we did. For now, the truth about 3I Atlas remains frustratingly out of reach, hidden behind layers of uncertainty and limited observational data, whether it is a remarkably unusual comet or something far more extraordinary. This interstellar traveler has captured humanity's imagination and reminded us that the universe is still perfectly capable of surprising even our most brilliant scientists. And maybe that is exactly what we needed, a reminder to keep looking up, keep questioning, and never stop wondering what else might be out there waiting to be discovered.